This was about 2013, where PTSD progressively got worse, and I was lost. I was just moving too fast, and my family was scared to even look at me or talk to me. They wanted to stay away from me, so I was moving so fast and reckless, to the point they were avoiding me, to the point my mom had to leave the house, to the point I wasn't getting no phone calls, and I felt like my family left me for dead. I wasn't understanding why nobody was reaching out, when in reality they wanted to help me, but they were scared. They didn't know how to approach me. And there was a time where I purchased 2 weapons. I purchased 2 guns. I had a .38 caliber and a Glock 40. And it happened in this house, actually. The neighbors were terrified of me doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and I would remember that I would go in the room, lock myself in the room, and like walk around the room with the gun in my hand for no reason, just like ready to just do something stupid. And I didn't care about anything. I don't understand what that was about. I really don't. Like, now I'm thinking about it, I don't get it. I don't remember what that was about, but I remember calling my friend who also was in my unit. He's a police officer. And I took the gun, I got in the car, and I was at the end of the road. I was saying I love you to everyone, my cousins. And I called him, and he's like, what's up? And I was like, I need help. I need help now. And he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I can't get it together. Something's wrong with me, but I need help. And he seemed to be busy. I got love for him, I love him. But he seemed to be busy. He was on patrol, so he was supposed to call me back. As I was waiting for the phone call in the car, as I'm sending out I love you text messages, I'm waiting for someone to respond. Nobody responds. So that made me feel pretty just unwanted. And I had already lost everything. My family. I wasn't seeing my son. I came upstairs, and I'm so glad it didn't happen. But I put the gun to my head, and I was ready to just do it. And my son popped in my head. My son popped in my head. I remember that clearly. And I just broke down. I didn't even have a bed in the room. I just slept on the floor. It was nasty. I was just miserable. I didn't shower for like 4 days. It was bad. I wasn't eating. It was just shitty, man. And I was scared, but I didn't care. I felt hate. And I couldn't do it. I wanted to do it, but I couldn't do it.
Every time you talk, if you just do this one thing, it's going to rob you of confidence.
I hated myself. I hated myself. I was exhausted to the point where I just didn't care. Exhausted, and I mean exhausted. Like, I remember that day clearly. I was just ready to give it up.
So my brother, Adam Nadiak, he passed away when he was 30 due to a prescription painkiller overdose. And I later found out that he had PTSD that I believe affected his drug addiction. When I speak about my brother, if like a newspaper reports on an event that I did, or someone understands what I was saying or anything, oftentimes people repeat back to me, Adam Nadiak committed suicide. And his death was ruled an accidental overdose, and yet I don't correct people when they say that. Because he died in this way that I don't know. Knowing what he was going through, he could have very well just let the addiction take him. He could have been very aware that the pills he was taking too many, and one day it might take him, and he probably didn't care. Did he pop a bunch of pills with the intent to die? I'll never know. The doctors think it was an accident. But I know that he had an addiction. 1 turned to 2, 2 turned to 3, 3 turned to 4. I don't even know the numbers, but I know that he was taking way more than he should have. It's tough, but that's why I don't correct people when they say he committed suicide, because they're not far off if it's not the truth. And 22 veterans commit suicide a day, and if you want to put my brother in that statistic, go for it, because if it brings the veterans that are still with us today help, because the number is too high that people are getting more grants, put him in that statistic. Because he was dealing with things that he shouldn't have been dealing with. And he didn't jump off a bridge, but he definitely let his lifestyle take him. I had called him the night before. I was working for Assemblymember Kevin Cahill at the time, and I was going to represent him at a Korean War veteran ceremony. And I was going to give a speech about the veterans, and I loved Korea, so Korean War veterans, even better. I had a free ticket. Why would my brother ever want to go anywhere with me? But I called him, and he had never sounded happier. I was in the parking lot of Barnes & Noble, and I said, do you want to go to me with this thing this weekend? And he said, oh my gosh, I'd love to. And I said, Adam, you cannot be late. He said, no, I'll hop right on. I'll come on out. It'll be great. First of all, he'd never sounded so happy to go someplace with his sister. I realized I think he was so happy to be invited somewhere where he knew people would understand him. He was going to be around, I don't want to say old, but old veterans who would understand his humor, who would understand his life. They could talk shop, and he'd feel at peace. And he said, let's go. And that was 7 p.m., and then the next morning at 9 in the morning, I sat down at my desk to text him the information, and I got a response back from someone who I guess had been with him, and they said, Jill, can you call me? At that, I had known something was wrong. And I get on the phone, and it's just a doctor, and they said, Jillian, your brother was brought in at 7 a.m. this morning. He was unresponsive. We lost him. I'm like, that took like 5 seconds. Like, what? It was the most insane day of my life. And my mom had to go to the hospital because she had a breakdown. And I had to go to the hospital where my brother was. She was in Ellenville. My brother was in Newburgh. I had to go all the way out there. I had to identify his body. And the toxicology report, it took a few weeks to come back. I said, when it comes in, do you want to see it? My mom said, no, I know what happened. He had cancer. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to see it in writing and confirm what I already know. And I know that she already knew it was drugs. But she had convinced herself so deeply. And I don't blame her. And it took about a year before I could get her to sit down with me. And I said, if we're going to move forward together, we have to be open and honest. And so I sat her down with her priest, and I told her. She didn't even cry. She was that broken, you could see her brokenness, but at that point, a year later, she was just broken all the time. I lost my brother. My mother lost her son. But what did everybody else lose? It's a hard question to answer because I don't think the world got a long enough time with him to know that answer. I want to say something sweet, like they lost a really good friend or something. The world didn't get that chance. And the chance that the world had, they didn't see that chance. It's a really good question. And I think that's an important answer. There's a lot of veterans that come back that don't know how to talk to anybody. And they don't know how to make friends. So they spend their lives alone in their rooms playing video games with people who don't see them.
My wife was at work. My daughter was at daycare. For some reason, my mom called, and I was just spiraling, just going downhill. Somehow, she knew I had a gun. She said something to her shrink, like, I think my son's gonna kill himself. My wife left work. Pretty sure it was my wife that called the police. And it was a cop, actually, showed up at my house. I was ready to kill myself, and he was trained to deal with veterans. So like when he showed up, he identified himself as a cop. Then he's like, I noticed that you were a Marine. And he's like, I'm a Marine. So this whole time, like in my head, I'm like, my wife's coaching you, you know, I had a gun, all rights, he could have shot me. He just started talking to me, and that's how he diffused the situation. That night, he got me to calm down, got me to sleep. The next day, I started on another rampage, and he actually came back. And he actually drove me to the hospital. I don't even really know how that day went, so I just know I was spiraling. I mean, I took a bunch of pills. That was my first attempt. That didn't work. So then I guess that's why I ended up with getting a gun. So happy it didn't happen. I'm here, you know, now I got a beautiful family. I just think I was just at the low of my life, I guess. When they say the grass is greener on the other side, it's not the truth. I mean, I can go out and buy anything I want. I'm not hurting for money. And for some reason, I was just at my low, just rock bottom. I had a blood alcohol level of a 3-4, which the nurses didn't even understand how I was like walking, talking. They sent me away. I actually went to a cycle ward, and like it was a mixture of medication that was wrong that I got from the VA, the drinking, depression. When I was up there, my wife brought my daughter. My daughter was not even a year yet. I didn't even know she had teeth until I was sober, and I seen that. I was like, when did she get teeth? My wife's like, they didn't grow overnight. So that opened my eyes a lot. I was sober for once, and I noticed things. So if it wasn't for Nick Hurst, I probably wouldn't be here doing this interview.
But there were cases that you lose.